Hello everyone. So my name is Nisrina Fadhila with student ID number 123241040. And now we are going to review an article titled Representation of Gender in Young Adult Fiction, a feminist discourse analysis of Suzanne Collins, The Hunger Games, written by Dr. Mamuna Yasmin Khan and Sadaf Khan, published in the Indus Journal of Social Sciences in 2025. And next. Okay, so this article discusses gender representation in the Hunger Games, a dystopian young adult novel by Suzanne Collins. And what makes this study important is the fact that young adult literature has a really strong influence on how adolescent readers see the world, and their view on identity, power, and social roles are quietly shaped by the story they read. And this article specifically looks at how the language and narrative in the novel either construct or challenge gender ideology. So it's not just about what happens in the story, but how the story tells it. And next will be presented by my friend.
Okay, first of all, let me introduce myself. So my name is Saskia Aulia Haafidzah, with the student number is 123241004 and okay, now I will present the summary. So the article analyzed gender representation in the Hunger Games through feminist critical discourse analysis or FCDA, and it finds that Katniss is both a subversive female figure and a character constrained by patriarchal norms, while Pita and Girl represent different forms of masculinity. The study also shows that young adult or YA literature can shape adolescents' views on gender and power. Next. Next is about research objective. In this article aims to examine how gender roles are constructed through in the novel The Hunger Games through a feminist critical discourse analysis. It specifically seeks to identify the linguistic and narrative strategies that either construct or challenge traditional gender ideologies, as well as to assess the extent to which Katniss Everdeen embodies feminist agency within a patriarchal framework. Furthermore, this article demonstrates how young adult literature plays a significant role in shaping Dawson's readers' perception of gender identity and power dynamics. Next.
Okay, so moving on to the methodology, the approach used in this study is qualitative, and the main framework is feminist critical discourse analysis or FCDA, and the theoretical basis come from the three scholars, and the first one is Fairclough, and argue that discourse actively shapes social reality, and the second is Van Dyck, focus on how ideology and power are embedded in language, and the last one is Peltier reminded us that texts are never neutral. They always reflect certain power relation. And next.
Okay, so next is we move to key findings. The study reveals that the Hunger Games presents gender in a complex and often contradictory manner. Katniss Everdeen is depicted as a subversive female character who challenges traditional feminine roles through her physical resilience, emotional control, and independence. However, the narrative also reinforces certain gender norms, especially through Katniss' involvement in a love triangle and her commodification by the Capitol's media apparatus. And in addition, Pita and Girl represent different forms of masculinity, where Pita embodies empathy and vulnerability, while Girl represents a rigid and traditional masculinity. Overall, this article argues that the novel is an important text for understanding how YA literature can both challenge and reproduce gender ideologies in the eyes of teenage readers.
Okay, now for the limitation, there are three main ones. The first is only one novel was studied, so the results are limited to the Hunger Games and cannot really represent all young adult fiction. And the second, the study doesn't include either responses, interview, or survey. And the third one, the analysis process isn't fully detailed, especially in terms of how the scenes were chosen. And next, it is a scoping. The first article, the title is a representation of gender in young adult fiction, connects a literature, gender, and discourse analysis together, and it looks out at all the main characters, not just Katniss, but also Pita and Gale, and examines how gender is constructed through language using FCDA, while the second article, the title is Feminism in Suzanne Collins' novel The Hunger Games, takes a different approach. It uses a sociology and of literature combined with feminist theory, and it focuses mainly on Katniss and specifically identifying what types of feminism she represents, which are liberal and radical feminism. And next,
Okay, next we move to our personal insights. So for me, the studio is significant because it demonstrates that Hunger Games is not only a form of entertainment but also a text that shapes readers' perspective on gender and power. Katniss Everdeen is portrayed as a strong female figure, however, she remains constrained by patriarchal structure through the media commodification and romantic expectation. And for this reason, the novel serves as an important example of how young adult literature can both challenge and reinforce gender ideology.
okay, it's also about personal insight for me. Going through this article generally changed the way I read. Before I saw Katniss as just a strong female character, and that was enough for me. But after reading this, I started noticing things I completely miss. The way her image is controlled by the capital, the way her emotions are always being framed by the narrative, and how even her most independent moments are still tied to a love story. And that made me realize something. Strength doesn't automatically mean freedom. A character can seem powerful but still be shaped and limited by the story around her. And I think that's the most valuable thing this article taught me, to read not just what a story says, but how it says it and whose interest that language is actually serving. As a literature student, I think that's a skill we really need. Next.
Okay, so to conclude, this article gives us a deeper understanding of how gender is represented in the Hunger Games, and it also reminds us that the literature, especially YA fiction, has the power to influence how readers think about identity, gender roles, and social power. Thank you for listening us, and goodbye.
Bye bye.